I'm going to begin with kind of a review. Number one, Ecclesiastes is, well, let's start on page 834. And chapter 1, verse 2, theme of Ecclesiastes. Meaningless. Meaningless, says the teacher. Utterly meaningless. Everything is meaningless. Pretty grim stuff, right? So as we've come to learn, Ecclesiastes is trying to figure out what has value and worth in life, what is important, and how can we have perspective. So meaningless also means vanity. It means something is futile. It means something, there's foolishness. It's ephemeral. It's taking a mouthful of air and coming up with nothing. So that's what Ecclesiastes, what we're learning about the issues in life. And then go to chapter 2, verse 1. I thought in my heart, come now, I will test you with pleasure to find out what is good. So Kohelet, our author, goes off and does every possible good thing. I'm going to have a great time, eat, drink, and be merry, yee-haw, yippee-ki-yay. This is going to be a good time. And then he says, all right, that wasn't such a cool thing. So now, chapter 2, verse 4, I undertook great projects. I built houses for myself and planted vineyards. I made gardens and parks and planted all kinds of fruit trees in them, etc., etc. He became a workaholic. Now I'm going to do as much productivity as I can. I'm going to have as many accomplishments after my name as alphabet, comma, this, comma, that, and I am going to be, wow, just so productive. And then found out that, yes, that too is meaningless, foolishness, vanity. But how many of us are still thinking, if I accomplish one more thing, have one more project, one more something, that it will be the end-all to be-all. So it's not to say that those working projects are bad. It's to say keep the perspective. Keep the perspective and realize it is, in fact, not the ultimate, and you will not live happily ever after when you complete one more thing. It might even be getting all 4 of the children married and out of the house. You know, that might be the end-all, be-all, but really there will be something else that comes after that. So keep the perspective as we go through these projects in our lives and the goals that we have in our life. Let's keep the perspective. That's the message here from chapter 2. And then in chapter 2, verse 24, we have the first summary statement. A person can do nothing better than to eat and drink and find satisfaction in his work. This too, I see, is from the hand of God. For without him, who can eat or find enjoyment? So the perspective is, all right, given all the stuff that's going on in life and all of the issues, that meal that is before you, whatever it is, if it's peanut butter and jelly or bologna and cheese every day for weeks and weeks on end, thanks be to God that we have this meal that God has provided for us, because without God, we would have nothing. So on to chapter 3. And they popularized by the song, there is a season for everything, a time under heaven. So there's a time for everything, which says, let's keep the perspective. Let's keep the perspective and the balance and not go overboard with what's happening in our life right now at this moment, whether it's good or bad. Let's keep the perspective and realize that there is, in fact, a time for everything, because the one who created time, God, has a plan for all of us. And then when you look down on verse 12, he has also set eternity in the hearts of humans, yet they cannot fathom what God has done from the beginning to the end. God has put eternity in our hearts. So all of these things and all of these seasons and all of these projects and all of these things that we're doing, the perspective is ultimately we are before our Creator. And there is that time, that judgment, that one-on-one, that eternity that is really the overarching umbrella in our lives. So keep the perspective about the seasons and the time, and be also mindful of that eternity to come. And then chapter 4, verse 1b, the oppressed have no comforter. They have no one to comfort them, no one to stand beside them to have compassion, and that's our job. It isn't so much that evil exists. Kohelet, the author, says, yeah, evil does exist. Bad stuff does happen to good people. That's it. So where are the comforters to come along and walk alongside those who are being oppressed, those who need to be comforted? That's where we come in. You know, in the third world versus a democracy, when you go on a border mission trip, you cross the border, you see abject poverty, you see in-your-face stuff that needs to be done. When you go to Los Cabos, Mexico, and serve in the barrios, and you see that poverty, boy, it's real easy to roll up your sleeves and see the stuff that needs to be done. But what are the oppressed right around us in school? Anyone ever know someone come from school and a bully picks on a friend? I understand now that they do cyberbullying. Cyberbullying. You get text messages, and so you can diss someone and be horrible to someone over the airwaves of cyberspace, so you never have the accountability of seeing how much my zing to you devastated you and sent you into tears because you're safely on the other side of the planet being nasty long distance. So who stands around the oppressed? Do you laugh and say, ha ha ha, isn't that funny, your best friend got zinged, isn't that silly? Or do you come around behind them and say, this is wrong, this is not good, and how do we comfort? So in our developed world, so-called developed world, are we really so developed? Are we really so developed in that we are still needing the grace of God, needing the love of God, and the people around us who are hurting need that love too? And so when Kohelet tells us that the power was on the side of the oppressors and they had no comforter, we're called to be the comforter of the people around us, and whatever that turns out to be. And then turn the page to chapter 5, verse 1. Stand in awe of God. Guard your steps when you go to the house of God. Go near to listen rather than to offer the sacrifice of fools. And we talked when we studied this chapter on being silent before the Lord, not coming with our own opinion and our own, oh, we know everything about who and what God is, but coming with open hearts to listen. Who is this God? What message does God have for me? We've all experienced times in our lives when God convicted our heart of something. We know God has convicted us, and then we walk out of the sanctuary or we walk away from our time of prayer and fellowship and we ignore it. We've all experienced that. And this is saying only the fool would do that. Only the fool. When God puts conviction upon your heart, when we are silent before the Lord, our response is to be, yes, Lord, may it be so, Lord, not my will, but thine be done. And then this goes also with chapter 5, verses 13 and 14. I've seen a grievous evil under the sun, wealth hoarded to the harm of its owner, or wealth lost through some misfortune, so that when he has a son, there's nothing left for him. Naked a person comes from his mother's womb, and naked he departs. When we put too much store and too much stake on our accomplishments and the money that it generates, and we measure our lives with our wealth, that is foolishness, that is dust in the wind, that is vanity, that is hebel, that is insanity. For ultimately we cannot control how long we're going to live, how long that money is even going to last for us. And then goes, which also goes with chapter 6, verses 1 and 2. I have seen another evil under the sun. It weighs heavily on men. God gives a person wealth, possessions, and honor so that he lacks nothing his heart desires. But God does not enable him to enjoy them, and a stranger enjoys them instead. This is meaningless and a grievous evil. And so let's keep the perspective about the things that we have in our life, the physical, tangible things that money provides, and let's be generous people. Generous people, for it's not our stuff anyhow. Chapter 7, verse 14. When times are good, be happy. But when times are bad, consider God has made the one as well as the other. And therefore, a person cannot discover anything about his future. So do good things happen in our lives? Do bad things happen in our lives? Is God in control in the middle of both of those things? That's the message of Ecclesiastes. Trust that God is present, and when we are in the middle of wonderful things happening, claim it as being from God. When things are in the middle of messy things, claim that God will work through that mess, and that there will be transforming life in the middle of the muck that we find ourselves in. And trust and claim that God, in fact, is in control. And then in chapter 8, verse 16, when I applied my mind to know wisdom and to observe man's labor on earth, his eyes not seeing sleep or day or night, and then I saw that all that God has done, no one can comprehend what goes on under the sun. Despite all our efforts to search it out, a person cannot discover its meaning. Even if a wise person claims he knows, he really cannot understand it. Which says, We're not God. God is God, and we are not, and we will never be God. So when we don't understand, instead of saying, why me, or why this, or why that, why not? Why not? For God has a plan in our lives if we will trust that and name that God, in fact, does have this plan. And then chapter 9, verses 7 and 10. It's another summary statement, but this time adds the importance of family. Go. Eat your food with gladness and drink your wine with a joyful heart, for it is now that God favors what you do. Always be clothed in white and always anoint your head with oil. Enjoy life with your wife whom you love all the days of this meaningful life, for God has given you under the sun all your meaningless days. For this is your lot in life and your toilsome labor under the sun. Whatever your hand finds to do, do with all your might, for in the grave, where you are going, there is neither working, nor planning, nor knowledge, nor wisdom. Embrace life. This is as good as it gets where we are. This is on this earth. We're walking on borrowed time. Every day we're alive. This is it. It's a gift. Live it, claim it as gift, celebrate it as gift, and put the whining away. The whining is not helpful. It's not changing the circumstances, and it is not claiming that God has grace abundant in our lives. So pack the whining up. Put it in the closet, slam the door, lock it, and throw away the key. For there is no place for it to celebrate and enjoy your life here with the people around you and celebrate it as gift. In chapter 10, verse 10, this is talking about wisdom is only wisdom if we use it. If we don't use it, is it any good? So there's a whole list of things about if the axe is dull and its edge unsharpened, more strength is needed, but skill will bring success. So if you've got a dull blade in your life, or you've got a test coming up in school, if you don't study for it, ba-ding, and then you complain that you didn't get a good grade, hello, wisdom is only wisdom when we apply it. Anybody ever do something stupid in your life? And you just say, oh, I wish I woulda, coulda, shoulda. It's the hindsight when we become so incredibly brilliant, right? Well, I guess I was a little stupid on that one. It's slowing down, taking the time, and applying wisdom in advance. Only then is wisdom any good. And then chapter 10, verse 14. No one knows what is coming. Who can tell him what will happen after him? Which goes with chapter 11, verse 8. However many years a person may live, let him enjoy them all. But let him remember that the days of darkness are coming. Again, that perspective. We're here now. We have this life now. It's not guaranteed for 1,000 years. It's not guaranteed for 110 years. It's not guaranteed even for tomorrow. This gift we have of life, when we embrace it and say, thanks be to God, we have no idea how long. Anyone know exactly how long you're going to live? Anybody got any clue? If you die tomorrow, do you die happy? Have you lived and been a blessing and experienced blessing? That's what we are looking at in our lives. Whatever age we're at, to be content that we have lived fully to this life. That we are present with our family, present with our community, present with our jobs, present in our relationships. We are there. And that we can say in the end of all, thanks be to God that I lived a faithful life loving my God and showing that with the people around me. And then that brings us to our final chapter, which we're technically beginning today. I'm going to read through this first part. It's about aging. It's about the end of life. Remember your Creator in the days of your youth, before the days of trouble come, and the years approach when you will say, I find no pleasure in them. Before the sun and the light and the moon and the stars grow dark, and the clouds return after the rain. When the keepers of the house tremble, and the strong men stoop. When the grinders cease because they are few, and those looking through the windows grow dim. When the doors to the street are closed and the sound of grinding fades. When men rise up at the sound of birds, but all their songs grow faint. When men are afraid of heights and of the dangers in the streets. When the almond tree blossoms and the grasshopper drags himself along and desire no longer is steward. when man goes to his eternal home and mourners go about the streets, remember him before the silver cord is severed or the golden bowl is broken, before the pitcher is shattered at the spring or the wheel broken at the well, and the dust returns to the ground it came from, and the spirit returns to God who gave it. Meaningless, meaningless, says the teacher. Everything is meaningless. This is about getting old, ultimately dying, and our spirit returning to God. And this, when the grinders cease because there are few, you know, you've seen an old person with very few teeth and just got gums. The grinders, the teeth are few. The doors are closed and you're looking outside. You don't trust the world anymore. When you get up, when the sound of the birds, my in-laws get up so early in the morning. I mean, the older they get, the earlier they get up. And then it says here, but the songs of the birds grow faint because you can't hear them. So this is about the body failing and aging and saying, you know, remember God in your youth. Remember, so to live fully into our lives, however long we have in the dailiness of our lives, because all of us are going to die. That's just it. From the minute that we are born as infants and precious ones, right? We all gonna die. So how do we live our life? So there is no regret. There is no, oh, coulda, woulda, shoulda. But blessing. And ultimately, as we've been given these summary statements throughout Ecclesiastes, we end with another summary statement of what matters. Not only was the teacher wise, but also he imparted knowledge to the people. He pondered and searched and set out in order many proverbs. The teacher searched to find just the right words, and then he wrote what was upright and true. The words of the wise are like goads. They're collected sayings like firmly embedded nails, given by one shepherd. Be warned, my son, of anything, in adding anything to them. Of making many books there is no end, and much study wearies the body. Now, all has been heard. Here is the conclusion of the matter. Fear God, keep His commandments, for this is the whole duty of humanity. For God will bring every good deed into judgment, including every hidden thing, whether it is good or evil. We have 12 chapters of wisdom, 12 chapters of us reading through it and nodding our heads and going, this kind of makes sense, it seems like a good plan. 12 chapters of saying, yeah, that's pretty good stuff. Who has responsibility for applying it? Green and growing. Who's going to be green and growing? Green and growing. Discipleship. What are ways in our lives that we are called to discipleship? What are the opportunities, guys? I can't make you do any of it. You can't make me do any of it. Can any of you make me get up in the morning and do prayers? Not possible. Can any of you make me read the Bible? Can any of you make me show up on Sunday morning to preach and teach? I mean, you really can't. It is the response of faith in our lives that says, yes, I want to grow in my faith. Yes, I want to learn more about God. Yes, I want to serve more. Yes, I want to be present. I want to be a disciple. I want for the world around me to know that there is a difference in my life. That when you look and say, man, Miss Betty, you are a Christ follower. There is Jesus in your life. Kelsey, I see you at school. I see you walking, and I know that you live and follow after Jesus Christ. Have I seen you around, ma'am? You seem like somebody who follows Jesus by your actions. There's something about you. Is Jesus in you? Have you the Spirit of the living God in you, Sharon, when you're dancing? The Spirit is there for us. Are we going to live into it? Are we going to grow in our faith? And it matters so much for the world around us to see that Jesus makes a difference in our lives. No one can make you want this. It is the call of faith in our lives. It is the invitation every single morning when we get up. Are we going to live for Jesus today? Friends, that is the invitation before us. May we be Jesus' people. May it be so. Amen.